On Halloween night, 6-year-old Michael Myers walks into his house, sticks a mask on, and slashes up his older sister with a kitchen knife. 15 years later, after spending all that time staring at a wall in a mental institution, he breaks out the day before Halloween and goes back to his hometown for a little bit more action. What is it that makes this film such a classic? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with its budget. It had a minuscule budget of $300,000. I think that budget forced the filmmakers, forced John Carpenter and his crew to really get creative and to really do things at a level that kind of gave the film an air about it that wasn't necessarily intended. And of course, the intention of the filmmakers was to scare people, was to make people feel tense, and the film does that. Even today, this is from 1978, the film is still quite scary, it's still quite tense, it lingers in the mind afterwards. It's not something that terrifies me, but when you switch that TV off at the end of the night after watching it, and you flip that light out, and you've got to walk upstairs, there's a little bit of you that has to turn back and look over your shoulder. But there are certain things about it, with regards to the budget, as I say, that are really there to mask certain deficiencies that they had as a crew. Not because of their talent, but just because they didn't have the money to do it. But those things that are used to mask the deficiencies then play into the film as things that we as an audience can read into and kind of make things more enlarged by it, more enriched, shall we say. The character of Michael himself, when he goes into the house, he slashes his sister up. There's a moment when we're seeing it through his perspective, and he looks up at the knife. He's literally looking at what he is doing. Now that moment, purely from the stance of the filmmakers, is there to hide the fact that while the camera turns away, the actress can rub blood on her body, and then when it looks back, it looks like she's been slashed up. But for us, we get a kind of psychological perspective. Why is Michael looking at the knife? It's like he doesn't even know why he's doing what he's doing, and he's examining every single aspect of it. He's a voyeur. Everybody, of course, is familiar with the William Shatner mask, the iconic Michael Myers mask, but Myers wears a mask before that one at the age of 6. He looks down at the floor, he picks up this little clown mask and he puts it on. Now again, that gives us like a psychological perspective of this character, but for the filmmaker's standpoint, it allowed them to set up another shot. It allowed them to cut and then start again. It gave them a transition to cut from one shot to another. You look at the anamorphic lenses they used to shoot the film. Now, what these lenses do is give us a really wide kind of view of all the scenery, but they're used throughout, even in just living room scenes. You don't get many scenes in this film that are shot in very close up, where you have two people talking and they do over-the-shoulder shots. Everything is done in a wide, and I think a lot of that, again, is down to saving money. You have whole conversations that'll take place in one shot, and that's what having that wide-angle lens does. If you did that in a mid-shot, if you did each scene in a mid-shot and you just played it through as one shot, it'd be quite dull. But as soon as you put it in that anamorphic aspect ratio, you can see everything. The world is opened up. So it hides, it masks the fact that actually you're getting away with not really shooting all of your coverage in the way that you might do on most films if you had the budget. You do your wide shot, your establishing shot, you do your mid shots, your two shots, you do your close-ups, your over-the-shoulder shots. Carpenter doesn't do that here. A lot of the time he'll play an entire scene out in one shot, and with the help of those wide angle lenses, it works. The added bonus of that, like I say, is that it creates distance, it creates shadows and places where Myers can lurk and kind of pop up, or where the suggestion can be made that he might pop up. So, a similar film that did this more recently was It Follows. A lot of that film is shot in wides. And the key there is that it draws your eye to different parts of the screen. You're always looking for where this monster is going to come out from, it's going to attack. An added bonus of what I think is mostly a choice made for budgetary reasons. The story itself is very simplistic, but it's brilliant in its execution in that it sets up this character who is essentially the shape of evil. That's why in the credits he's referred to as the Shape, because it's not enough just to call this person a man, to give him his assigned name from birth, Michael Myers. He's the shape of evil. He's the very face of evil. He could be the very devil himself. There is definitely a supernatural element to this film, not least of which the fact that Michael won't die, but also the fact that from the age of 6 he's been locked away, and yet when he breaks out after 15 years of incarceration, he can drive a car. And Loomis calls it out himself. He's challenged by someone who says that Myers can't even drive. How's he going to get to Haddonfield? He can't even drive. And Loomis said, "I was doing very well last night." He throws out this line and it's like, well, actually, yeah, you know, where did he get those skills from? And the film does address it, you know? And it's this idea that Michael is being driven by some force beyond himself, this force of absolute evil. Loomis himself half the time refuses to call him by his name. He calls him It.
Don't underestimate it.
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
Loomis is so tied up with the idea of Michael being the true face of evil, he can barely bring himself to call him by his name. Speaking of Loomis, this guy is a brilliant creation, a very good character. But on the page, really he's nothing more than exposition. He's Basil exposition. And if it wasn't for the talents of Donald Pleasance, I don't think this guy would work particularly well. He is literally there to tell us all about Michael and to present this picture to us of Michael as the face of evil.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it or you can help me to stop it.
You believe in his passion, in his absolute focus, in his belief in who Michael is. And because he believes it, or we are convinced so much that he believes it, we believe it too. His obsession gives him a real strength, so much so that at times he's barking orders to the sheriff. He's got absolutely no authority to do that, but he does, and it's his belief that compels him and propels him forward. And the sheriff kind of picks up on that, you know, and he does what he's asked, he does what he's told. In many of the sequels, when Michael Myers kind of pops up, he gets straight on with the killing, and that's not so here. Much of this film's running time is taken up with Michael peeping from the shadows or, you know, behind bushes and things. And you kind of ask yourself, why is that? And I think it feeds quite well into the character, into the psychology of the character. I mean, think about it. He's been thinking about nothing else for 15 years. Finally, he's out. This is his night, his big night, and he's savouring the moment. He's watching these kids, he's watching these teenagers, and he's waiting, he's savouring it, he's building it up until we get to the last 20 minutes in which he lets all hell break loose, basically. It's that build-up that creates the tension. You're always waiting for this guy to do something. You're always waiting for the dog to be let off the leash, so to speak. You know it's coming, you know it's going to happen, but it just takes quite a while, and that's what builds the tension. It's tension 101. Michael's also a very childlike person as well, if you can call him that. I mean, there's a moment when he puts this sheet over himself and he pretends that he's a ghost kind of thing to kind of get close to one of his victims before killing them. And I think you can read that as being a bit silly, really. You know, why would this killer do that? That doesn't make much sense. But when you think about who this guy is, it actually makes a lot of sense, because he's still, in his head, quite childlike. He's just psychopathic, you know, or being directed by evil, whatever you want to call it. But he's also a child, you know. He's not developed the same way as other people. He killed his first victim when he was 6, and he's never really grown after that. You know, whatever skills he's developed since then, we don't know where they've come from. They've come from somewhere unearthly. So whatever's directing him is still directing essentially this grown-up 6-year-old boy, and that feeds into a scene like that with the sheet. You know, you can write it off as silly, but if you want to read more into it, yeah, I think it says a lot about Michael Myers' character. One of the elements about this film as well that still leaves you kind of scared by the end of it is just the fact that nothing is resolved. You know, where this monster is set up, he's unleashed, he causes havoc, carnage everywhere, but then he's just gone. That's it, he just disappears into the night. So you're left at the end credits kind of thinking, well, where's he going next? He could come here, he could come to my house, you know, and the film leaves you on that precipice. Jamie Lee Curtis is also really great. The moment when she's caught in the closet and Myers is busting his way in, I love her performance there. She plays a really great vulnerability to it. And there's a moment where she's kind of reaching out for a hanger, but she's kind of like, oh, do I go for it, do I not go for it? It's like, it's there in the body language. She's got that genuine, terrified young woman kind of vibe about her. You know, I don't feel like she's just performing. I feel like she is that person, that she is in that moment, and that's testament to her as an actress, and, you know, so early on in her career as well. Now, the film isn't perfect. There are a few things about it that kind of grate on my nerves a little bit, and it's mainly just some of the dumb things that some of the victims do. You know, Laurie Strode included. She kind of takes him out sort of by sticking this knitting needle into his neck, and he falls down behind the chair, and then she sits there with her back turned to him, you know. Okay, first time, maybe you can get away with it, even though me personally, I'd have my eyes on this guy the whole time as I'm backing towards the door and leaving the house. But she doesn't. She sits there with her back to him, and it kind of feels a bit, yeah, it's a bit stupid. Okay, it builds tension, great, because we know he's going to come, but yeah, bit silly on your part. But then she does it again, you know, after this guy's come back essentially from being, you know, stabbed in the neck. She takes him out again, takes him out upstairs, and yeah, sits there on top of the stairs with her back turned to him. Really? Halloween is often referred to as the granddaddy of the slasher genre. I think personally that honour belongs to Psycho, and let's not forget Texas Chainsaw Massacre did come before this as well. However, I do think this is a better film than that one. Not Psycho, but hey, I give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's an absolutely fantastic film. It is a classic in its own right. It has waned a little bit over the years for me, but then again, you know, I've seen it so many times. What did you think of this film if you've seen it? Please comment below and let me know. And while you're at it, if you haven't done so already, please click subscribe and like this video if you don't mind taking the time out of your day. Until next time, thanks for watching. But yeah, this is certainly a better film and one of my favourite slasher genre.